All right, Coach, we'll go over here on the right side, about midway back in the orange.
Coach, Ryan Lavoie, Sports Call Auburn, this way. Ryan Lavoie, Sports Call Auburn. Your offenses have been well regarded for a long.
He's young, just like Luke. They just freshman year had a really good spring game. Done some placement with myself 2 places before. I've always thought he was way ahead of the game.
Benefit is there to having that Alabama game be so late in the season.
Of SEC Media Days live from the College Football Hall of Fame, and today our Tuesday coverage brought to you by Talent Heating and Air. That's right, get the Talent Heating and Air Conditioning team of Thomas, Terry, and Jeremy on your side. They have a combined experience of over 40 years. They stand by their commitment to their customers and their comfort in Huntsville and surrounding areas. Your satisfaction and home comfort is the #1 priority for them every day. They offer services and repair services, new installation, ductwork repair and replacement, indoor air quality solutions, natural gas work, biannual maintenance, and so much more. Give Talent Heating and Air a call today. You can give them a call at 256-503-4490. It is Talent Heating and Air. They are today's sponsor of SEC Media Days for Talking Ball here in Atlanta. And yesterday it was a easy day, kind of a nice day to get started. Today, Alabama, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, and South Carolina all in attendance.
Yeah, no doubt. It's going to be a full day. We had 3 yesterday because Greg Sankey always takes center stage to give us the state of the SEC address, which he did yesterday. Talked about the NIL, which I knew would be a subject. Talked about conference expansion. Said right now they are content to be where they are, but as we know, that can change quickly, Scott.
He left the door open, though, for other teams or other situations to come about, and he took some subtle jabs at the Big Ten. You know,
he
saying
said
that
without a
Texas
doubt.
and Oklahoma, you know, obviously
Trump, the USC and UCLA.
Yeah.
And I would agree with that. I don't care about California brands. Everybody knows that. So, you know, I mean, that's just soft football to me.
Right.
But Texas and OU are huge additions. There's no doubt about that. So we're excited to see them join the league in 2025, and we'll see if it's sooner. But as Greg Sankey said, that's really not under his control, and so that's what we're counting on right now. So. You know, and certainly it does sound like he wants to work with each individual state and athletic director and come up with a plan for NIL for it to be this streamlined and with some, uniformity, which I thought was a good message from Greg Sankey. So that's already been a big topic in the spring meetings with the head coaches.
And there was a head topic yesterday with Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin, who – for the most part, was just kind of, I don't want to say subdued a little bit, but.
For Lane, yes.
Yeah, here's a little bit of Lane on name, image, and likeness from yesterday.
In that discussion, I mean, I think ideally, if we're going to be in an NIL world and somehow you're going to do it right and it's going to get capped, you know, so that there's some way of controlling it and keeping playing fields close to the same. Otherwise, you're just going to have these glaring differences within Division I football based off of what I've said before, their salary cap. I know that's not really the right word. And ideally, I would think that the coach should be part of managing that. That's, you know, how you would want it done, but I don't know if it'll be that way or whatever. So that's just how I would do, and that's based off of look what happens in professional sports. There's salary caps, and the coach and the general manager / owner manage that.
Coach, we're going to go right in front of me. About
Because
3 rows away.
the other thing about that too is if it's not, I would say, okay, well, why would you put it that way when coaches aren't supposed to be involved in that? Well, you got a whole other set of problems. If you got boosters out there deciding who they're going to pay to come play, and the coach isn't involved in it, how's that work? I mean, they could just go pick who they want and pay them however much, and then are they going to tell you, the boosters going to tell you who to play to? And then when they don't play, how's that going to work out? So, again, this was not thought out at all, in my opinion, and has created a massive set of issues, which I think when people really thought about it, from a coach's standpoint, could have predicted this was going to happen.
In other words, it's Jimbo's fault.
But he's right, though.
Yeah,
I mean, are
there's
the
no
boosters
doubt.
going to come down from the stands and say, "Look, I paid
The Texas and Texas A&M
$90,000
probably
for that guy.
Probably
I want him
so.
on the field."
Probably. I mean, there's no question about that. And I don't know how Dirt Neck would, deal with that, and especially if it said boosters had some kind of feed into his headset.
You need to play number 72. I paid $70,000 for him. I want my money's worth.
Yeah, I mean, Lane's right. What he basically is saying is it's not sustainable.
Right.
And so that's what has to happen. So, and I think that's one reason why after they got called out on the carpet and then by Nick Saban, and then, of course, then got basically exposed further by the member of their organization telling all the kids, well, these guys up here in these suites are going to pay you. Texas A&M's kind of laid low in the recruiting awards right now. Now, I'm sure they'll make some moves later on. They're not going to just continue to stand pat. But again, like Lane said, though, it's just not a sustainable model. You can't have the boosters, and that's what Greg Sankey mentioned. The coaches don't want boosters directly involved in it.
Right.
You can't do that because then it opens up a whole other set of issues. It's almost like the players answering to the booster, like, okay, yeah, what do you foresee my role being? Well, I'm going to call the coach, and don't worry, you're going to be at the first or second on the depth chart, really quickly when you get there. I mean, you have to earn it. I mean, can you imagine a booster calling Nick Saban and saying, well, I paid $90,000 for this guy, he needs to start? That conversation wouldn't last very long, and it would be kind of brutal on the other side of the phone.
Well, can you imagine this, though? Imagine if you have a quarterback, and I'm just using some examples here.
Right.
Let's say you bring in a quarterback, and you already have a starter, and I'm not saying a Bryce Young level, but let's say they were all conference the year before. You bring in a freshman that is, let's just say, on the level of a Arch Manning type of recruitment where it was high profile, it was high everything. You bring this kid in, and quarterback A, who has started all last year, maybe guided your team to 9 wins, 10 wins, comes out and struggles a little bit. You got a freshman quarterback that you paid $90,000 for,
or
in NIL money,
$9.5 million or whatever.
Yeah, and he's not playing.
From John Ruiz.
It's like, I want him to play.
Yeah.
I want him to come on. I want my quarterback that I paid for to play. This one's struggling.
So
Those are questions that are going to have. I mean, they're going to come up. They will.
No question.
Speaking of questions, coming up at about 9:05 this morning.
Second hour.
Yeah, well, actually, it'll be 8:05 back home. 9:05. Yeah,
8:05
I keep
Central,
on
9:05 Eastern.
Yeah, I keep on doing that because I'm forgetting Central Time. I mean, because
we've
otherwise
had to reprogram ourselves
well,
here.
But yeah, because I'm not going to do the 2 time zone when I'm here. I want to do,
Eastern,
I'm living on Eastern Time. But at 8 o'clock or 8:05, roughly around that time, Alabama head coach Nick Saban will be live on our airwaves. Nick Saban is set to meet the media here. So because of Talent Heating and Air today, you will get to hear Nick Saban live right here on 97.7 ESPN The Zone. He is scheduled to talk to everyone around 8:05. Will Anderson, Jordan Battle, and our third one, Bryce Young. How can you forget him? There is a Bryce Young exhibit here inside the College Football Hall of Fame. Bryce Young will be making his way around the area here today as well. So Will Anderson, Jordan Battle, Bryce Young, Nick Saban. I guess you could say 5 questions or 4 questions because we got 4 people here. For one for Nick Saban, one for Jordan Battle, one for Bryce Young, and one for Will Anderson. What would you do for Nick Saban? The one question that you want to know really from Nick Saban at this point?
Well, I mean, I think, for him, for Coach Saban, I would want to know in his mind what's the biggest question about this team. Every team is different.
Right.
For him going into fall camp, what's his number one thing he's looking for? Is it internal leadership? Is it the offensive line? You've been asked a lot of questions about that. I know I certainly have already. Is it the cornerback spot, to me, where there is talented players that have played, but they have not started consistently at the University of Alabama? So where are they injury-wise? Because the running back room was extremely banged up by the end of last year, and the bell cow of the running game, super senior Brian Robinson has moved on to the Washington Commanders. I got that right. I'm proud of myself. But, he's moved on to the NFL. So, where does the running back room stand? Because Jace McClellan, Roydell Williams coming off of injuries. Really, Trey Sanders wasn't completely healthy last year either. So, these running backs are having to get healthy. And then if you're wanting to ask Bryce Young, what in your mind is how much more comfortable are you headed into your second full year as a starter, and how big for you was it to return Bill O'Brien as offensive coordinator? And again, we know that the offense under Nick Saban, no matter who the coordinator is, for the most part stays the same.
Right.
But every coordinator puts his spin on things and has, the things he loves to do offensively and the wrinkles.
Right.
So how big is it with the relationship there and the trust with Bill O'Brien and Bryce for him to be back? And then Jordan Battle, the first thing I would ask him is, what was the biggest reason you decided to return to Alabama? Because there was a lot of people that thought he may move on to the NFL after his junior year. And he had the pick six in the SEC championship game. I thought he had his best year in an Alabama uniform. What was his biggest motivation for that? And then Will Anderson, do you feel like with Will, everybody is, of course, talked about his year last year being the best player in college football. He should have been, in New York for the Heisman.
Yes.
But in his mind, the way he's wired, what is the biggest aspect of his game that he needs to improve?
I imagine on a broader scale, when Nick Saban steps up to the podium this morning, he is going to get asked, where does it stand between you and Jimbo Fisher? I imagine he will get asked that question simply because there are people here that still want to know, and national media-wise. Bryce Young, I imagine, will get asked, how do you handle the pressure of winning a Heisman Trophy and coming back for a second season? Not like he had a choice, but coming back this year, how do you build on a Heisman Trophy success? Will Anderson will get asked about that defense. Is it as good as what people are saying right now? What's the ceiling for the defense for Alabama in 2022? And then I think Jordan Battle will get asked, how do you replace so many people in that defensive backfield?
Well, yeah, and again, the safety room is experienced as any in college football. When you take into account DeMarco Hellams playing next to a Jordan Battle, when you take into account Brian Branch and what he did last year by the second half of the season, Malachi Moore even healthier now. Good grief, he looks so ripped. He looks like a strong safety now. So you've got him. He's got some experience as well. He was a freshman All-American, one of the newcomer of the year defensively in the SEC in 2020. So you've got four guys right there that are extremely experienced in your safeties room. And so if these corners can come along and the corners can stay healthy, there's no reason that this secondary for Alabama shouldn't be outstanding. Elijah Ricks is extremely talented, but he's coming off an injury, and he didn't play a ton last year at LSU. He needs to gain weight, needs to also schematically, and the neck up part is what a lot of people don't think about. They just think about, okay, is he healthy physically? It's not a video game, though. You can't just plug him in and run a defensive scheme, and then he goes out there and makes the play. You've got to be confident in what you're doing. You have to have the trust of the coaching staff. So that battle between him and Kyrie Jackson, who gained some confidence last year after, basically not playing at East Mississippi. He transferred out of the Kansas JUCO system. Scott was going to play for Buddy Stevens over there at East, but we know what happened with COVID in the Mississippi junior college system. It canceled that season, so he didn't get to play at all, and so he didn't really get on the field a ton at Alabama except special teams until the last third of the season, and that's when he started gaining some confidence as a player. He's a freakazoid athlete, so that battle probably is on the defensive side of the ball. People want to focus kind of on Jalen Moody, the senior incumbent who came back out of the transfer portal at the Will Spot, and Deontay Lawson, but I think the most interesting battle going into fall camp is Kyrie Jackson and Elijah Ricks. Who's going to be that other outside corner? And I think the guy that probably doesn't win that job is going to be the slot corner.
It is 7:20 on a Tuesday morning. We are live from the College Football Hall of Fame. It's SEC Media Days 2022. Let's get that first break in. When we come back, we'll talk about the other three teams that are here in attendance today. We'll get the stage set for the rest of the day. And who knows? You never know who may drop by. Coming up here in a minute. Coverage of SEC Media Days live here from Atlanta, brought to you by Talent Heating and Air Conditioning. They are proud to offer their customers in Huntsville and the surrounding areas with a wide variety of options to keep their homes cool in the summer and warm in the winter. Give Talent Heating and Air a call, 256-503-4490. You can find them at talenthvac.com. Talent Heating and Air, proud sponsors, presenting sponsor of our coverage here on this Tuesday from Atlanta. The College Football Hall of Fame is where we are calling home, Drew. And today, when Alabama comes to SEC Media Days, now, we painted this picture last year when we were in Hoover that it is an entirely different atmosphere when Alabama arrives. Alabama is set to get here in just a few minutes, possibly already here. We got here about an hour ago, a little over an hour ago. If this was the Winfrey, we'd be walking into probably about 100 different Alabama fans packing the lobby. When we walked in, there were still, I say two, but there were still some Alabama fans that have already showed up here to the College Football Hall of Fame. More have showed up now. But it is an entirely different atmosphere. There is a buzz in the air when Alabama arrives at SEC Media Days.
Yeah, you know, we always kind of joke about it when Nick Saban gets here that Elvis just entered the building, and then when they wrap up, it's Elvis left the building, and that's basically the way it is with Nick Saban. He draws a lot of media attention, both local and national. I'm sure the main room is going to be packed when he takes the stage, and we bring that to you today at 8:05 a.m. Central Time here in the great city of Atlanta. So, it's going to be interesting to see what Nick Saban's point is, because he always has a calculated plan,
right.
And, based upon his opening statement, what he wants to emphasize going on with this year's group and this year's team. So, and then we know there's going to be questions about Dirtneck and Jimbo Fisher. That's people are going to ask that. I'm sure he'll get NIL questions as well, because, again, his biggest strength as a coach, and he'll tell you that, is recruiting and being able to get the best players. And that climate has changed a lot with the NIL and the transfer portal. And, of course, they'll ask about the transfer portal additions, I'm sure. He had not a 17-man class like a Lane Kiffin, but he brought in several big-time pieces that have a chance. You may have as many as 5 starters coming in from the transfer portal. When you think about Tyler Harrell, Jermaine Burton, Jahmyr Gibbs, Tyler Steen, and those guys, and Elijah Ricks. So he brought in a smaller group of transfers, Scott, but one that's certainly very talented.
The excitement that builds around SEC Media Days when Alabama arrives takes me back a little bit. 99, 2000, when I got Steve Spurrier from Florida.
Right.
That was the buzz when Steve Spurrier would
he was the
arrive.
best quote ever. I mean,
yes.
like the now retired Pat Dooley, who was the longtime Gainesville Sun columnist and covered the Gators beat. As he said, he was the best coach ever to cover, because Coach Spurrier was so honest. You knew he didn't care what he said, and from that standpoint, he was never afraid to say something. So Coach Spurrier was always, someone that was ready with a quote.
That buzz is in the air. It's that same buzz that we have for Nick Saban that we had when, now I got here to the tail end, obviously, but that was the Steve Spurrier type of buzz.
From 1990 to 2002, Steve Spurrier controlled this league, and he elevated that Florida program to heights that we had not seen. And so that's what, Steve Spurrier became the face of the SEC.
Yep.
I mean, Gene Stallings did a great job during, his tenure at Alabama from 90 to 96, but still, Steve Spurrier and the Gators were the standard.
Yeah, that was.
And so that's what you, if you wanted to win the SEC, it went through Gainesville, Florida. And that's why everybody looked forward to hearing from Coach Spurrier. Everybody wanted to put a microphone in front of them. Now Nick Saban has taken on that role, and he's the face of the SEC.
That is totally true. As far as the player buzz, I've never felt any more of a buzz. And Tim Tebow, when Tim Tebow was in the league that day, I remember the feeling and the excitement when he was set to arrive. Not had anyone on that level. Bryce Young, the reigning Heisman Trophy, there's a little bit of a buzz in the air for him, but nothing compared to what we had when Tim Tebow was in the league. We may be here in Atlanta, but we still want to hear from you there in the Rocket City. 256-576-4977. That is the number to the Neighbors Wealth Management Hotline. We still want to hear from you and your thoughts on a Tuesday morning here in Atlanta. Now, joining Alabama today, now at the same time, while Alabama and their players make the rounds, they're going to share the space with the Vanderbilt Commodores. Clark Lee and company will be on hand. And you and I last year, Clark Lee's very first year in the league, very first year at Vanderbilt, we came away very, very impressed with Clark Lee, how he handled himself, how he sold the program, how he sold himself, and you felt like he has the tools to energize Alabama, or Vanderbilt. But like I said, you never know who is going to stop by here for the table. And
we have now joining us here on Radio Row at the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta, Georgia, the best player in college football, in my opinion. And it's an honor to have Will Anderson now join us live here on Radio Row. Will, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. How are you guys doing?
How does it feel to be here in Atlanta and knowing that as you make the rounds here, the start of fall camp is just around the corner. You don't have to talk anymore about the coming year. You don't have to talk about anything. You actually get to put the pads on and play.
It feels great, man, just to go out there and start hitting people again and flying around and having fun and being energized with my brothers. That's all I'm looking forward to, so it's been great.
We actually were talking about this a couple of minutes ago in our first segment, Will, and he asked me, Scott did, what would be my first question for you? And I guess with all you accomplished last year, and I think we all believe New York, you should have been a Heisman candidate, but you were the consensus National Defensive Player of the Year. In your mind, but the way you're wired, what is the part of your game that you think you need to improve the most heading into this junior year?
The part I probably need to improve most probably is my dropping it space area and stuff like that. Yeah. And I just want to get better on my counter moves as well. But other than that, those are like the big things I've been hitting on this offseason. I know me and Coach Saban talked, and those are like two of the biggest things that he just told me I need to work on, with just in space and, finish with my counter moves a little better. So that's what I've been working on.
When you watch film or you watch it with the coaches, how is that? How does that go? I mean, did you just walk in and sit down? Because we hear players talk about this all the time. Oh, yeah, I got to go watch film, or I watch film with these coaches. How interactive is that? Take us through the process of actually watching film and trying to get better.
It's very interactive. As soon as I come in, I already have a notebook and pencil with me, because I already know he's going to have a couple of notes for me, and then he's going to go send me off to go write some notes and come back and report to him on what I see. But it's very interactive. This is my first year with Coach Hutzler from Ole Miss. He's our new coach. Yeah. But when I was with Coach Salsinseri, he had cut-ups of, rundowns, pass downs, screens, third down, second down, first down. So we all had, like, individual cut-ups, and then we would go watch full games, to see tendencies, what they got beat with, what they didn't get beat with, and stuff like that. So it's very interactive. And then he'll stand up sometimes, and, we'll go through things like that, go through different pass sets and other things like that. So, watching film is very interactive, a lot of hands-on.
It's not just putting it on, hitting play, there is a lot
pause,
to it.
Get up, let me show you this. Let me show you how this works. So very hands-on as well. So, but it's great. I love it. I love every moment of it.
Well, and the fans are going to want to hear this too, because we know Coach Sal is still in an off-field role. He's been a mentor to you. He helped develop you as a player. But what have you taken from Coleman Hutzler? Every coach brings something a little different stylistically to the position. I know schematically it's not going to change, but how is he coaching you?
No, he's coaching me great. He's done a great job. He's young. He's energized. I think what he brings to the room is just youth and just more energy to the room and stuff like that. And I think that's, why he's there. But, it's been great. He's been a great coach. He's taught me a lot, especially in pass drops. I think that's what he's been really good at. And, pass rush and stuff like that, but really just dropping in space, knowing what leverage to use, knowing, where to drop 10 to 12 yards, and just the little things the little details that we need to clean up from last year that's making a big difference.
Has defense always been where you played? I mean, growing up, did you flirt with the offensive side, and where did the love for playing along that defensive line come from?
So I kid you not, growing up, I played fullback, and I was just a little wrecking ball. Yeah. We was in I formation, either the B gap, A gap, C gap, any of that. I was just blocking for the running back, but that's really what I did. And I played blocking tight end, so I was really just a blocking body, nothing. Yeah. I when I got a little older, I started playing a little running back here and there. But when I was like 5 or 6 years old, Kevon Glenn, he plays for Georgia Southern right now. That's like my best friend, and he was bigger than everybody. And we lived in the same cul-de-sac, and my coach would say, "This gonna be the king of the cul-de-sac." Y'all is this big. And that practice, he just had the snot coming out my nose. He was hitting me so hard. And after that, I never wanted to I just wanted to hit people after that. I never wanted to be getting hit like that again. So I think that's where defense started coming.
A little bit of time left with Will Anderson, All-American for the University of Alabama. You and Bryce Young made a little bit of history last year as sophomores being team captains. But we wanted to ask you about this defense as a whole. You helped bring Dallas Turner along last year, even Drew Sanders, who's now moved on. How good can this defense be? There's so much experience back and, of course, continuity with the staff.
Yeah, so much experience, so much talent, and the guys have been doing a great job of learning the plays. I think that's what we lacked last year, just mental errors. And, they've been doing a really great job of learning the plays. Like, I'm so proud of those guys. And I think this defense has the potential to be very special. And this 2016 defense, I think it can be just as good. We have the pieces. We just got to get everybody on board. So it's special.
I got to ask it because a lot of people want to know. It didn't end last year the way you guys wanted to. What's that feeling like in the stomach? What's the feeling like with the guys right now?
The feeling is, we know what happened. Everybody knows. We talk about it all the time. We try not to hint too much on it, but we know that feeling is still in our heart. So every day when we wake up and go to workouts and team runs, team lifts 7-on-7, we know the feeling. So we just go out there every day and get better, and we never want to get that feeling again. So.
Well, we'll stay healthy, man. We can't wait to see what you've got for us in year 3 at Alabama. We've certainly seen what you've done in the first 2 years, which has been outstanding. But thank you for the time, and we look forward to seeing you this fall.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Will Anderson joining us here on day 2 of SEC Media Days. Of course, today's coverage brought to you and presented by Talent Heating and Air. That was a fantastic conversation with Will Anderson. And I tell you what, very well spoken, very well composed. And I think it's funny that he played fullback growing up, and after he took a couple hits was like, no more of that. I'm going to the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, no doubt. He certainly did, and he's the best player in college football, in my opinion. You saw him sitting down in front of us, the length, the size.
Just shaking his hand.
Yeah.
I mean, his hand is ginormous.
Yeah, he's a bad hombre, man. And he's got a lot of tools in the toolbox, and yet he's not satisfied. And I think that's what separates him from a lot of guys is he's just someone that, he's wired differently.
Yes.
He's a great natural leader. That's why he became a captain as a sophomore. He's a guy that put up eye-popping stats. We know, he led the nation in tackles for loss. He had over 17.5 sacks. Somehow he didn't go to to New York for the Heisman because I guess people want to talk about Alabama fatigue and things of that nature.
Well, and then he's a defensive player.
So was Aiden
he's already
Hutchinson.
facing.
All you heard from the Michigan fans was how good Aiden Hutchinson was, and he was a really good player. But he's not Will Anderson. And I think we saw when they played Georgia in the semifinals that Michigan matched up with the Dogs. The Dogs just played with them. And so I just think Aiden is going to have a good pro career. But the Will Andersons of the world and of that ilk and with that skill set, they don't come along every day.
Right.
And so you have to be very blessed and fortunate if you're Nick Saban to have signed the young man out of the state of Georgia, and he committed to Alabama early and then really didn't take any more visits. Certainly the Georgia Bulldogs tried to get him to stay in state. They weren't as aggressive as Alabama early, and Will Anderson, knew where he wanted to go. He knew Alabama was the place for him, and pretty much from the jump, from his first practice, he's set a new standard. And he's played to the standard. That's what you hear Nick Saban, the mantra to all the time. I mean, from the first, scrimmages of Will Anderson's career, you just heard he's different. He's really like a robot, and that's a compliment.
Yes.
It's just his motor is different, his level of play is different, and he's helped elevate this defense, and they got a chance to have a special season.
All right, it is 8:40. The Alabama players are walking around here. We could have Bryce Young, we could have Jordan Battle here in a minute. Let's get our break in now while we don't have anybody at the table. We'll be right back with day 2 of SEC Media Days live from Atlanta. They are today's presenting sponsor of Talking Ball, 97.7 ESPN The Zone, live from SEC Media Days. Give Talent Heating and Air a call, 256-503-4490. Let the guys at Talent Heating and Air of Thomas, Terry, and Jeremy, let them. They've got a combined experience of over 40 years, and they stand by their commitment to their customers of comfort in Huntsville and surrounding areas. It is Talent Heating and Air, today's presenting sponsor of Talking Ball. And Jordan Battle, Bryce Young, Will Anderson making their way through here, the College Football Hall of Fame. And it's kind of funny. Not funny, but kind of cool, surreal moment. Bryce Young walking by his own exhibit inside the College Football Hall of Fame and taking a second to stop and look it over for just a minute. Kind of a surreal moment, I'd imagine, for him.
Well, of course. I mean, not many Heisman Trophy winners come back to school, even though we've seen it with Johnny Manziel, because he won it as a redshirt freshman at Texas A&M. And we've seen guys return, like Will Anderson, who's the National Defensive Player of the Year, many people thought last year. So every now and then you'll have a prodigy kind of guy that comes back to school. And again, unlike college basketball, when you have a college baseball or a college football, these guys have to stay in school at least 3 years. In college baseball, or if if you're 21 years old, you can be eligible after 2 years. And so that's just one of those things, but you have a chance to come back and make your mark on the game. And we haven't seen a two-time Heisman Trophy winner since, Archie Griffin in the 70s for the Ohio State Buckeyes. And Bryce Young will certainly have his opportunity to do that again. It's harder because, again, once you win the Heisman, you have so much more expectation on you. You have so many more eyes on you that you have to almost be better. You have to almost be not perfect, as no player is, but your margin for error is so small, and they almost nitpick and look for a reason to give it to someone else. So it's going to be interesting to see how Bryce handles that, and also to see if he can stay healthy, because I think the key for Alabama, and I said it last year, they had to have a healthy 9 and a healthy Bryce Young to reach their goals and to win an SEC title, which they did, and have a chance to play for a national championship, which they certainly did. But if you don't, keep Bryce Young healthy, you're not going to reach those goals this year as well. So that's going to be one of the biggest things. Alabama, the offensive line has to execute, and you have to have a healthy Bryce Young. And if you do, then he's going to have a chance to repeat as a Heisman Trophy winner. We'll see if that happens. But certainly Alabama's other Heisman winners, Mark Ingram had a chance to win another Heisman Trophy as a junior at Alabama, but he got injured as well and didn't have the production as he did as a sophomore. So Derrick Henry had a huge junior year. He moved on, and so most of the time when guys have these Heisman-type seasons, like a Devontae Smith when he was a senior, you're usually moving on to the NFL. So a unique situation having Bryce come back and to be kind of the face of college football. But, it's going to be a lot of pressure, but I'm sure it's something he relishes.
All right, 97.7 ESPN The Zone. We are home for SEC Media Days 2022, live from the College Football Hall of Fame. And coming up at the top of the second hour of our show, just a couple minutes after that, Nick Saban will be on our airways. We will have the head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide coming up here in just a few minutes. So make sure you stay with 97.7 ESPN The Zone. Download the app today in case you are not going to be in your car. You can hear everything that Nick Saban has to say here inside the College Football Hall of Fame for SEC Media Days 2022.
The questions, what would happen if the game clock started again after an incomplete pass, just like it does for a runner out of bounds? What would happen in the game? And we worked with Navigate, and we said, let's have a trial rule change. Let's say that we wind the clock after an incomplete pass, other than the last 2 minutes of the first half, last 5 minutes of the second half, For our sample set, let's use the 56 2001 SEC conference games. And let's use an analysis where we use observables in the video to figure out what time would run off the clock if we did wind it after an incomplete pass. And then go take all of the data analytics for those 56 games from Pro Football Focus and algorithmically determine what it would do to the game. And you're probably thinking to yourself, well, he's going to go to how it's going to save overall game time. Curiously enough, we found something that's much more compelling if you do this, and that is that are not played in the game. And in Navigate's analysis, they have 80.2 plays per team.
That's John McDade, the coordinator of SEC officials, talking about one of the new rule changes there in college football, and that is starting the clock on an incomplete pass rather than letting it.
They're wanting to shorten the game. They're wanting to because some of these games become 4-hour marathons, and they're trying to shorten college football games and come up with ways to speed the game up. It's just like pace of play. There's a lot of that talked about with a pitch clock in Major League Baseball. It's the same thing. They're wanting to, get these games over with quicker. Certainly, it's why they streamline the overtime situations, and we saw it in the Iron Bowl, Scott, where now you go for two, after basically the second overtime, which is it's just a battle of 2-point conversions. Not a big fan of that,
right?
But they also were taking into account injury situations as well, trying to protect the players in a way.
All right, 256-576-4977. That is the number to the Neighbors Wealth Management Hotline. The Vanderbilt Commodores have also entered the building. Clark Lee making his way around Media Row upstairs here on the second floor of the College Football Hall of Fame. Bryce Young, Will Anderson, Jordan Battle also getting ready to head downstairs as all three of them are set to start making their rounds. And they'll do so at 9:05, so they have about 10 minutes before they start making all of the media rounds. And when I say media rounds,
there's a schedule.
There is, let's see here, 3, 6, 9. There is 10 different stops that a coach and a player will make throughout the day.
That's right.
So Nick Saban will, when we say the main room, Nick Saban will meet with about 70% of all of the reporters at one time in the main room. That is the big room here. If you've ever been inside the College Football Hall of Fame, it is where the football field is. That is where all of the main room congregates. And then from there, they will meet with the electronic media, and then they have to meet with Sirius XM. They have to meet with ESPN. They meet with Marty and McGee. They meet with CBS twice. They meet with CBS Digital. They meet with SEC Radio. They meet with SEC Social. They hit on the SEC Network. They do Sirius XM. They have to meet with ESPN, the SEC Network Social. So when we say stops, those are the 10 different stops that a coach and a player will go throughout the day. So Nick Saban will start his day at 9:05. He will not be done till approximately 12:30 today. So it's about 3.5 hour tour of reporters that they have to go throughout the day.
Yeah,
that is a long day when you're facing questions.
No doubt, but it's part of it. It's like they almost call it like the car wash when you come through here. I mean,
yes.
You're going through so many different rooms. They're coming up through here, and it's usually what they do. They usually bring the players up through Radio Row first, and then they start their rounds with the other media that's here. And you usually get, as we said, we got a few minutes with Will Anderson, the best player in college football. And so now we're wrapping up hour one here. Nick Saban, as you said, about to take the stage in the main room, and we're going to bring that here to you here live. SEC Media Days 2020.
Presented by Talent Heating and Air. Give them a call today, 256-503-4490. It is SEC Media Days on 97.7 ESPN The Zone. Download the app in case you can't be in your car to hear Nick Saban coming up next right here on 97.7 ESPN The Zone, your true home for sports in the Tennessee Valley. That it is hour 2 of Talking Ball live from SEC Media Days. We are underway. Today's presenting sponsor, our very good friends over at Talent Heating and Air. They are bringing you Day 2 coverage of SEC Media Days. You can give them a call at 256-503-4490. Make sure you give Thomas, Terry, and Jeremy a call. They are the owners of Talent Heating and Air. They have got a combined experience of 40 years, folks. They stand by their commitment to their customers in the Huntsville and surrounding areas. Hey, your satisfaction and home comfort is their number one priority. They offer service and repair services, new installation, ductwork repair, replacement, indoor air quality solutions, natural gas work, biannual maintenance, and so much more. Give Talent Heating and Air a call today. You can also find them at talenthvac.com. That's talenthvac.com. That is Talent Heating and Air. They are presenting sponsors of today's coverage here of Talking Ball. And coming up here in just a couple minutes, Alabama head coach Nick Saban will be live on our airwaves as we hear from the coach here at SEC Media Days. Of course, that brought to you by Talent Heating and Air as well. Now, Nick Saban is no stranger to SEC Media Days. In fact, the coach's very first appearance in SEC Media Days came in 2000. That was when he was with LSU. He had 5 appearances at SEC Media Days then. Then he did that jaunt to Miami for a couple years. Nick Saban has been wearing the crimson and white at SEC Media Days since 2007. That was his first year in Tuscaloosa. So Nick Saban, no stranger to standing on the podium and giving a speech. We expect to hear from the coach here any minute. Now, we did have a conversation.
If you want a note of Southeastern Conference.
And here is the Commissioner, Greg Sankey, introducing Alabama head coach Nick Saban right here on 97.7 ESPN The Zone, your home for SEC Media Days 2022.
We're okay today. That was a long time ago in 2008. Our first coach this morning is Nick Saban, who has led his teams over his career to 7 national championships. He has earned 8 National Coach of the Year awards and 10 SEC championships. He and his wife Terry have made a $1.25 million contribution to the soon-to-be open Saban Center in the city of Tuscaloosa that will offer science, technology, engineering, and math programs to young people from that community, along with theater and outdoor recreation activities. An indication of how we across the conference can impact the lives of those around us beyond just the game of football. University of Alabama head football coach Nick Saban.
Good morning. It's great to be here. I hope everyone's had a eventful, good summer. This SEC Media Day thing is, one of my favorite events of the year because it sort of signifies the beginning of the kickoff of another, football season. Lots of people love vacation, but I'm the leader of an organization, but I'm not the leader when I'm on vacation. So when I get the list to take the garbage out, run the sweeper, pledge the refrigerator, it's always, after a certain period of time, refreshing to be able to go back to work so that I can be the leader of an organization. So this is my 21st season in the SEC. A lot of great memories, a lot of relationships that have been built and memories for a long, long time. Even though you have great family time and look forward, coming off vacation, you have great family time, you always look forward to preparing for the challenges of another season. We had a good summer with our players. And I think our team has made improvements and progress in, a lot of areas, whether it's physical development, attitude development, and, trying to develop a mindset that will allow us to have good team chemistry, in the future. But, as we always do, it's kind of like, here we go again in making predictions about how young people, adolescents, will perform in the future. And, so that's why we play the games. That's why we have a season, so that we can sort of see how we grow and develop and, how the team develops, sort of all the things you need to develop on a team, the togetherness, the positive energy and attitude, the people being responsible for their own self-determination, the work, preparation, ability to overcome adversity, pride in performance that, make the team, allows the team to be able to play with the consistency you need to be successful for an entire season, especially in the SEC, which is a very challenging league. But I think it's also more difficult than ever to sort of predict how your team is going to develop in all these areas, because we have more turnover, on rosters, in terms of how do you create a sense of object constancy, which we all strive for in our life, sense of belonging, sense of family, sense of consistency in what's coming next, and what the challenges are, who I am, where I'm going, how I'm going to get there. And these things are all really critical factors in developing, creating an identity, personally, individually for players, as well as, for a team. And I think the more turnover you have, on your roster, probably the harder it is to predict, how those things actually happen. I think it's, also probably because of a lot of the changes that we have in college football as we move forward. It's also very, very important to stay focused on, what do you need to do to have a program that creates value for players and their future in terms of their personal development, their academic development, ability to develop a career off the field, which really prepares them for their future after football, and how can they develop a career, as a football player. So all these things contribute to how players can be more successful in life. And I still think, the focus needs to be on how do we continue to be able to have the kind of program that's going to help players develop value for their future, which is why we all went to college, all of us, me included, all of you. We want to make sure that we sort of stay focused on the things that are most important for college student athletes. The players that we have here, Bryce, Will, Jordan Battle, have all represented our program in a first-class way. I think they've represented the university in a first-class way, and the conference. All these guys are on track to graduate in December, which we're very proud of the academic standard that we've been able to maintain in terms of graduation rate. I think we're in the top 3 in the country in APR. These guys have provided good leadership, for our team. They've worked hard. They're the right kind of people. They've got the right stuff. They're very talented players. But the challenge is, are the players on our team all going to buy into the principles and values and the standards of the organization, which these guys have done a great job of demonstrating, so that we can create the kind of identity that will create the kind of consistency and performance that we need to have a successful team. So mindset is really, really important to that. Leadership, which these guys have done a great job of providing, is also very important to that. But it's also, how do the other people on the team sort of buy into the leadership that have been provided? And that's always a work in progress with new players in the organization, new players on the team. So we have challenges on our team. I mean, we had 7 players drafted, 2 first-round draft picks, and some very, very good players at wide receiver and other positions that, will be difficult to replace. I think we've had 113 players drafted in the last 14 years and 41 first-round draft picks, so very proud of the fact that we've done a good job of creating value for players at the next level. But it'll be a challenge for us to replace the skilled players lost. 2 great receivers on our team last year. We've got some significant challenges in replacing, some offensive line people, which, Bryce Young is a great player. He's a great leader. He's a great quarterback, obviously. But quarterback is also a position that may be one of the most difficult positions in all of sports to play if you're not surrounded by good people. So the challenge for us is to make sure that we do an outstanding job of developing the players around him so that we can continue to be a very productive offensive team. Defensively, I think we've got 7 starters back, but again, the biggest challenge is going to be, how do we replace the corners that we lost? Because, corner is probably the one position that puts the greatest restrictions on what you can do on defense. So that's going to be a significant challenge for us as well. I do think we have good specialists, so we should be good at special teams. I'm really pleased with the new special teams coordinator, Coleman Hutzler, that we have. He's done a good job. The players have bought into it, which is always important on special teams. And from a staff standpoint, this is the first year in a long time we've had both coordinators, continuity in both coordinators, which I think is, probably a important thing for us. And the new coaches that we have brought in to replace coaches on our staff have, fit in extremely well. They made a positive contribution in the relationships they've been able to develop and the energy and enthusiasm and new ideas that they've brought to the organization. So we're very, very pleased with the, staff that we have right now in terms of how they can contribute to developing, our team. I'd like to thank you all for all that you do to create interest, in college football, the self-gratification that players gain from the things that you do, which I think, college football is a great game, tremendous interest on a national level to, see how these players develop and see, how, the competitive balance is something that, fans and people that watch college football are always interested in. And I think you all have done a really good job of, creating a circumstance that is very positive for our sport. And, we certainly thank you, for that. So any questions?
Thank you, Coach. If you can raise your hand, Aaliyah, Bailey, and Kiera will get to you. Again, if you could stand, if you're able to identify who's asking the question, and then we will go from there. Again, please, we're going to start, Coach, over here on my left, right here in the middle, second row, Bob.
Hey, Nick, how you doing? I don't know if you noticed this, it stopped raining right before you came over that or not.
I don't think so.
Yeah. But as far as Will and Bryce, can you think of another team where you've had such elite guys on each side of the ball? And what's it like having 2 guys back that are so good, arguably, the best in the country?
Well, I don't like to compare players, but to have 2 players that make such a significant impact on our team as those 2 guys, I don't recall ever having a circumstance like that. We've had some great impact players, but never one on offense, one on defense of, the caliber that these guys have been able to play on a consistent basis. But I think probably bigger than that is around them. These guys set a great example. They're players that other people on our team can